Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Councillor Vicky Slade and I am leader of BCP Council. This is our regular weekly live Q&A. We will most likely have some of our cabinet members joining us who may well answer some of the questions. I've noticed our cabinet member for housing is already with us. Our BCP Council comms team will also be posting back if I've already answered a question. They will usually come back and make you aware that it's been answered earlier on. And sometimes we have additional council members, officers who are able to give information about specific issues where questions are not able to be answered on the spot. I would just remind you that it's probably not wise to go into personal information on here. We have had a couple of people who put their personal problems and concerns through Facebook Live, and it's probably preferable to do that as a private message or to use your counsellor or usual customer contact methods rather than putting things on here. So first question is, what action is being taken to stop dog fouling in the area? Dog fouling is against the law. We have limited resource like all councils, and you'll be aware that our resource is going down as time goes on. So we will do what we can, and there is the option for you to report dog fouling in a public place via the websites. Clearly, dogs on beaches, that will be stopping as of Friday. We extended dogs on beaches until the 22nd. We will not be extending it any further. So there should not be any dogs on the beach after Friday. Obviously, fouling in parks happens. And I would ask everybody, if you are walking your dog in a public place, your dog should be on a lead where other people are. That way, the dog isn't going to run off, foul the park, and you aren't aware of it. So if you are in a public place, your dog should be on a lead. It is your responsibility to clean up afterwards. Can I ask about bonfires? So we do not have and cannot gain a no bonfires rule. Bonfires are generally speaking fairly antisocial if they're happening particularly during the day, and they're particularly difficult at the moment with people who have breathing difficulties and people who are being told they're not allowed to go out. Although most of us are now out and about a lot more, people on the shield list have been told that they're not allowed to go out until the end of June. So if you are having a bonfire and the person next door is shielded, that is causing them a problem. So no, you shouldn't be having a bonfire. You can have a barbecue, and if you've got a fire pit, obviously it's restricted, but you know, again, think about people whose washing is out, people who are sitting in their gardens. Generally speaking, people feel that having a bonfire later in the evening is more acceptable. However, I would just add, bonfires that are open are incredibly dangerous. We've had that massive fire in Wareham this week, which has put our emergency services under enormous pressure. So, you know, if you're having a bonfire and you can have it in a confined space like an oil drum, you know, that makes more sense than an open bonfire, which can get out of control, especially with the ground being very, very dry and quite a lot of wind around. Are there any updates on weddings from June? So the wedding meeting happened last week with the registrars. All weddings up until June, I believe, have now been cancelled. And from the rest of the summer, we don't yet have the full government guidance, unfortunately, about ceremonies. We're expecting that they may allow ceremonies with just the couple and witnesses to go ahead later on in the year, but it looks unlikely that large gatherings will be allowed. So we are working our way through the weddings through the rest of the summer to actually potentially move those. I've had some really good input from an officer who's moved two for me. So my recommendation would be to contact the beach office if you're having a wedding at Branksome Dean Chine, and Highcliffe again if you're having one there. The registrars are in charge of the actual wedding itself. The ceremony venue obviously will be dealing with that. So if you need to contact us directly, feel free to email if you've got a specific query. But the general assumption is that if you are having a wedding that means you want to have family and friends there, it is highly unlikely that will be possible this summer. What is happening with parking permits? I was told not to renew on 31st of March. I'm afraid that's a bit specific about parking permits as such. Parking enforcement has been restored as of last week. So if you need a parking permit where you park, you need to have a permit. If you don't have a permit, then you will get a ticket. Parking charges in car parks has been restored. Double yellow lines, single yellow lines, limited parking is all back operational. Clearly, if you need a parking permit for a reason, you need to contact our parking services team. Again, go onto the website and contact them if you have a specific issue. So, Tori, I would suggest sending an email to parking services using the contact information on the website. Go into whether if you're in Bournemouth, Poole or Christchurch, there's a different way into the website. That's because of the IT that's still being upgraded behind. Then in the report it section, go into parking and then fill in the online form. Any updates on discretionary business grants? Nikki, this is driving us insane. So the advice came through Wednesday afternoon last week and was very detailed. The major problem is that the government have moved from local discretion to a term they're describing as a margin of flexibility. We are writing the scheme at the moment. I'm personally involved with this along with our head of finance and our audit team. We are hoping that we'll be able to share that with our colleagues in Dorset and with the Local Government Association next week. The aim the government had was that councils would start opening these schemes in early June. That's the timeline that we're working on. In the meantime, there are the business bounce back loans, which you can get from £2,000 up to £50,000. And I've heard fantastic news about them being handed out within a matter of hours of applying. They are interest-free and payment-free for the first 12 months. So my gut feeling is, do you know what, I'd probably take one of those, and if you can pay it back, if you get a grant, then that's all well and good, because the government are offering that at really good rates. But keep an eye on our business pages, sign up for our emails. We are working as hard as we can. There is a real problem in that a lot of people who we thought would be eligible for the grants, the exclusions the government have set have made it pretty tricky. So we will update as much as we can. I'm a dog walker when I can go back to work. Elizabeth, I haven't seen any details specifically about when dog walkers fit in, but my gut feeling is if you're working outside, then you should be in the phase that's coming up in June. I'm afraid that's not something that we have enough detail on. So you probably want to check that with the government FAQs, but I will see if we've got any ways we can find out. What's happening behind the government announcement around walking and cycling? Okay, so walking and cycling. There's two sides to walking and cycling. We've just been granted £79 million for the Transforming Cities Fund, which has some long-term, permanent and transformational things around sustainable travel to increase cycling, walking, bus travel, and realigning how people think about travel, which is really great. Last weekend, the government then announced a £2 billion package. We have not, surprise, surprise, heard what our allocation is. We're chasing hard, but we already have over 200 suggestions that we're looking at about short-term measures. There are a half a dozen or so that were already in play, which you'll see happening in the coming days or 10 days or so, around Tupton Bridge, around some of our high streets, to actually enable more space for people. But the pop-up bike lanes and protected spaces, junctions, bus corridors, those things are being worked through at the moment. I said last week, and I'll repeat it now, if you've got specific areas that you want to see stopped up from rat runs or things, let us know. I had quite a number come in after last week's Facebook Live, and we're feeding them into the system. However, bear in mind, officers have now got hundreds to assess. So don't expect us to be able to progress many more of them very quickly. They're looking through all of them, and we're looking to space them out so that all communities have got some benefit. But loads is happening. It's just that these things take a little while. The normal consultation, which requires a newspaper advert, 30 days, and then cabinet decisions around traffic regulation orders has been waived under what's called an experimental TRO. That allows us to publish with a 7-day response period, and it allows the council to trial things. These things can't be made permanent unless they've gone through a full consultation. So you might see things pop up, which pop up, for example, outside the hospital with more space for cyclists and more space for pedestrians. Don't be surprised if that happens and you say, well, no one asked me. That will be a temporary measure in line with the government advice. If there were any plans to make that permanent, then it would go through the full consultation. Okay, regarding business discretionary grant, Chris, we're expecting early June. Will let us register for our council updates, and you'll know as soon as we know. We're probably not, in fact, I know we're not going to be notifying businesses individually, because the whole point of the discretionary grants is our business teams are already in touch with people who pay business rates. Most of the people who will be eligible for the discretionary grant do not pay business rates, either because they have a rent inclusive package and it's their landlord that pays the business rates, or because they're a B&B, or because they're a market stall holder, or because they're a charity and get a mandatory relief. That means our business team aren't in touch with them. So we would be telling people who aren't eligible. So it's really important that we actually get it out there in the wider community. When is the pier open? The pier is open for walking on, but the facilities on the pier are closed. If it's not open, it's opening imminently when we've got staff to do so. Twin Sails Bridge and the Old Pool Bridge. Joy, I've raised that there is an overlap that we're just trying to establish whether the work on Pool Bridge is absolutely vital to be done at this point. If it is, safety first. If not, then we'll see what we can do to move it. I'm in communication with some local members of the public about that. Dorset Home Choice. Okay, great news. Laura and Mark Betteridge and a lot of other people who come on every week and ask the same question. Dorset Home Choice is now reopening. You will be able to bid for homes from Friday. The reason it's taken a little longer than some of our other schemes is Dorset Home Choice is shared between BCP Council and Dorset Council, and we can't open things unilaterally without Dorset Council being happy to do the same thing. So from Friday, you will be able to bid in the normal way. There is everyone who's on the housing register at the moment is getting an email today, which explains exactly how it's going to work. If you need assisted support because you don't have access to bid online, then the assisted service is available on a Friday, but you will be notified. And if you're somebody who accesses that because you don't have access to the internet, you're probably not on Facebook Live, but if you know someone in that situation, those people will be telephoned in the way that they normally are. So good news on that score. I see all the Astro pitches are open to use. I don't know the details about that specific site. I know the tennis courts are open and things, so pretty much you can go out, but you're not allowed to play football unless you're playing with somebody from your own household or one other person. And I'm not really into football, but I'm pretty confident you need more than one other person. So football as a group activity is not allowed. That is absolutely clear under the legislation. You cannot go and play football, whether it be in the lower gardens, on the local rec, or on an AstroTurf. You can play tennis with one other person, but only singles. You can play golf, but only with one other person unless they're from your household. You can go to skate parks, but you can't play football or any other group activity. Okay, why can't the infant schools who have no space for year one return? It's a bit detailed. Government guidance is clear. From the 1st of June, they expect that schools will reopen for year reception, year 1, year 6, and that at later stage the children in year 10 will return, and that at some time between June and the end of July, the children in years 2, 3, 4 and 5 will also return. We have a particular problem in parts of this area, parts of Poole, where we have a 3-tier system, and we're liaising with the government, with the schools and with Ofsted and people like that around how we can get year 4 and year 8 back, because those are the children that transition in North Poole. For everyone else, the transition is year 6. Parents will not be fined if they decide not to send their children back. We're trying to understand what that means for employers, because if you decide not to send your child back to school and they're in a group that should be going back to school or could be going back to school, where does that leave people in terms of childcare? So schools have remained open in BCP throughout this period. We have no schools that have stayed closed, apart from a couple of special schools. Even them, there are schools, for example, Langside, that deals with really profoundly disabled children, have 4 or 5 children attending every day. So that is the way the system is working, and we're liaising with our colleagues in the schools forum on this. Okay, right, let's work our way through. How can we be planning a Formula E race when we have not made extra space for walking cyclists? So, Kieran, this is a suggestion from a councillor, and I know that councillor is listening in. He may well want to reply to you. What we're basically doing is coming up with new ideas, which is exactly what we should be doing. New ideas to take us forward, to actually bring tourism to the town, to the 3 towns, for the future. That's all that's happening. Nobody is making serious plans at the moment. We put lots of ideas in a bucket and we take it forward. We have lots of things going on with cycling and walking, so they're not mutually exclusive. At the end of the day, cycling and walking is for every day. An event is an event is an event. Can there be arrows on the prom? I wish, Lucy, that was an option. The problem we've got is that I think we should all be keeping left. I know when I'm out walking or cycling, I always stick left because that's the way the British system works, but maybe that's because I'm a car driver. It would make life a lot easier. I will investigate it for you, but I do know that if we put signs up saying walk on the left, and then people walked on the right or cycled on the right or skateboarded on the right, then we'd have even more problems because people would be saying, but you're supposed to walk on the left. And so separating space is difficult, because if we put a line down the middle and say cyclists here, walkers here, and then a walker strays into the cycle or the cycle strays into the walker, then what do we do? So we have shared spaces, and shared spaces means we all have to share. I've got 4 kids. I know a lot about sharing. I know sometimes when you're sharing, you get arguments. It happens. Doesn't mean you stop sharing. The principle remains. All of us need to be more tolerant. There's been a lot. I have worked until gone midnight most nights for the last week, dealing with people on both sides of the cycling argument. I totally recognise that some people have been cycling too fast in an inconsiderate way, in groups, or causing distress to others. But that doesn't mean cyclists do that. That means those individuals are behaving badly, and we're working really hard with our cycling groups and with our comms to say, do you know what? We're all humans and we've all got to share this space together. So we need to stop putting cyclists in a group. Referring to them as a plague of locusts is frankly offensive. In the same way as we have people who put together young people, families, old people, skate park users, everyone's personally responsible, and we need to start taking that personal responsibility. So cycling will continue to be allowed for the time being everywhere that it is allowed. Cycling is not allowed on a pavement. It is allowed on a shared space. It is not allowed where there is a sign that says no cycling, and where it says cyclists dismount, you must dismount. So cyclists I know are contacting me and saying, please don't penalise all of us because some people are behaving badly. We wouldn't ban cars because some people speed. We've not got to try and work together. So please, everybody, let's just try and work together on this. The good news is I can confirm that there have been fewer incidents relating to cyclists this week than there were the previous week. So I'm hoping that my statement last week that we were in Last Chance Saloon has worked. Yes, you'll all tell me about your incidents, but ultimately these incidents will happen. We need to minimise them, and we need to make sure that we've got the balance right. Our staff who work on the seafront, whether they be beach patrol officers, whether they be toilet cleaners, kiosk operators, etc., would not have been employed when COVID started. They're seasonal staff, and they would not have been employed because obviously we wouldn't recruit them during lockdown. The announcement around lockdown being lifted to this first level came on Sunday night with the full details on Monday night. Our decision to open happened on Tuesday. It's not physically possible to have people working by Wednesday. So we're gradually getting people back in. We've started employing people again. It does take a couple of weeks. We want to make sure that people are safe. We want to make sure we've got references. We want to make sure that they are trained and able to start their jobs. So you will see a gradual increase of everything from visible beach patrols to toilets opening, kiosks opening, etc. Beach huts, Julie, I'm afraid you were given incorrect information that we have not said that we will give any refund on beach huts. That hasn't changed, and I've made that clear every single week. Okay, any update on weddings, private venue, not church? James, I've already covered weddings. Weddings is covered by the registrars. There is no guidance yet out from government. We're expecting that weddings with 2 people and witnesses will be allowed as we move into summer, but not larger events. Will the town hall be open for our wedding on June the 1st? Unlikely. You need to contact the registrars because we don't yet have the rules. 1st of June, it might be the first day for you and only your witnesses. It certainly wouldn't be possible for anyone coming to your wedding other than your witnesses, but you need to contact the registrars. They can give you specific advice. Okay, when is Wallisdown due for reopening? Nick, I think it's about 4 weeks. If you go on the website, you can get updates on all of our programmes of work, but it is on track. And there is full diversions in place, and it's good to know that the Wallisdown project will get finished, particularly because some of the funding from that comes from outside bodies, and if we don't get the work done in time, we have to give the money back. So we're working really hard to get that done. Anita, I share your view about the cycle lanes. Unless we get £10 million plus to actually build a wider prom, it's highly unlikely. Why have we not opened toilets down the beach? Zoe, we started opening toilets last Saturday. Our website is updated daily with which toilets are open. The Sandbanks toilets, the pier ones by the pier, the ones in Boscombe, the ones in Muddyford, and the ones on Poole Quay were all open from Saturday. And each day, as we're getting more PPE, more staff available, that is increasing. As I've already explained, we can't work miracles, I'm afraid. It takes time, and we've been telling people to please, only go out when they need to go out. You don't need to go out. Okay. Problem in Dale Valley Road with speeding. Speeding is a criminal offence and is enforced by the police. You really need to report using the Dorset Police website or the No Excuses website if you've got problems with particular areas with speeding. You can also contact your ward councillor, who they can put something in around looking at whether the speed enforcement measures are working. But realistically, unfortunately, speeding is something the police need to deal with, and they are dealing with 1,000 things at the moment. So you need to take that with the police. Okay. I dislike build-outs. The reason you stay. Okay, I'm not going to get involved in your debates. Okay, when will the next phase of helping the homeless back into permanent? We're constantly moving forward with that. One of the reasons we've delayed on Dorset Home Choice is because we're retaining a proportion of our accommodation now that people are allowed to move. That wasn't allowed, remember, until last Wednesday. We're retaining a proportion of those for our homeless so we can move them into permanent stable accommodation. Bear in mind, though, that if our accommodation that's available is a 3-bedroom house and the people who we need to help are single individuals, we can't put them in a 3-bedroom house, because apart from anything else, that would be unfair. It would also mean they would be responsible for rent they couldn't afford, and they would be liable for the government's bedroom tax, not ours, the government's bedroom tax if you're under occupying. So we're working on that. Unfortunately, we were hoping that the council, the government would be a bit more supportive in helping with funding to acquire more small properties. They haven't been. We are building more properties, but building takes time, and obviously we've had 2 months where we've not been allowed to build. We've applied for planning permission, lopping of trees. As again, I don't want to get into specifics. Planning is operational. The team are all working from home, so please don't phone for updates. Please email for updates. You should get a response within the normal time frame. If you're not, then again, normal thing. send an email to the team, and if you need to engage your local ward councillor, that's good. Okay, we know that some people are abusing the social distancing. Social distancing is the responsibility of police. So if there are groups of people, whether they are playing football, whether they're group cyclists, whether they're groups just hanging around, it is not something the council can enforce. So, please don't ask us, because we can't. The rules of lockdown are enforced by police. You can meet up with one friend. So can two teenage sensible boys kick the ball and use the goalpost in the rec? Yes, as long as there's only two of them. And as long as there's not two there, and then two there, and then two there, and then two there, and that makes 10. So yes, two children, 2 meters apart, can kick a ball into a goalpost, but they cannot have a game of football. Nurseries will still be operating under the way they do. All of our nurseries could be open at the moment. Some nurseries have not opened because they do not have staff that can open, either because their staff are isolating or because their staff are poorly. If a nursery can open, it will. Obviously, nurseries don't have the same staffing levels, and so it's a lot more difficult for them to open if they've got small numbers of staff, and some will have furloughed their staff. But nurseries can be open at the moment. If your child is at a nursery which is currently closed, then the council has already been giving people an option to send their child somewhere else. Clearly, it's your decision. My sister-in-law lives in another part of the county that's not BCP, and their child was offered a nursery place in a town about 20 miles away. Understandably, they said no, thank you. We're quite lucky in an urban environment that most of the offer for an alternative place won't be too far away, but that's down to you. Okay. Gosh, we've got so many comments today. What do we do for 0 hours contract nurses who have no work? I'm afraid that's not the council's responsibility. We're not responsible for everything. I can't answer that question, Mike. We're responsible for the council services, and the NHS is the NHS. I agree with you that the NHS should be politically accountable, and that's something that I'm arguing for, but I can't take responsibility for what the nurses are or are not doing, I'm afraid. Grass cutting. So we have made a new rule at the moment, and it's likely to follow our new protocols around rewilding the area. Grass verge cutting has restarted, but we are restarting our verge cutting with a single strip. This allows us to maintain visibility at junctions. It allows us to let people cross safely. Where verges are 2 or more mowers width wide, we will not be cutting the whole verge. We will be doing our best to try and make sure that we rewild places, that we allow the grass to grow longer. Before you start cynically, yes, there is a financial implication. We have to make very difficult decisions, but actually, from a ideological point of view, we would like to see more wildflowers in the area, and we would like to see those verges turned over a bit more to nature. So it's a bit of both. Where there is a line of sight, there is one width, the mower width wide, and that's across the way. If there are specific areas, again, every single member of the public has at least 1, most 2, some 3 ward councillors. Use them. That's what they're there for. If you have particular issues, they can actually they can actually put things forward for you. I love the painting behind you. I got this from Wayfair. It arrived yesterday. Isn't it lovely? Yes, £72 from Wayfair. So go grab. We've just redecorated our room, so it's looking a bit bare at the moment. Okay. Can I rent out my Airbnb and pool to people of the same household? I don't believe Airbnb should be operating at the moment. Nobody is allowed to live anywhere other than in their own home. So no, you are not allowed to go to your holiday home. You're not allowed to stay in an overnight beach hut. You're not allowed to stay away from home at all. You're not allowed to be travelling any further than you can return to during a day. Okay. Shout out to responsible cyclists. Yes. Okay. No decisions taken. Oh, I'm going to skip to the bottom. Right. What else have I not covered? The community hub is still open and working. We have met 20,000 people who have either phoned us and we've helped, or we've phoned them to help, which is amazing news. If people are shielded, they're carrying on shielding until the end of June. It may be that those people are going to start needing help as their key workers go back to work. So if you know someone that up to now has coped fine with their shopping and their prescriptions, but maybe that's changing, they need to contact us 0300 123 7052. We will be keeping that going 7 days a week, 8 till 8 for the foreseeable. And I hope it will form part of our community engagement going forward. Okay, government are speaking to churches to come together. And yes, well, government have always been speaking to churches. They're part of our team. Homelessness is a big team, charities, businesses, etc. One more thing I want to cover before we go. School appeals are continuing. So if you've applied for a school place and you've appealed it, we're working as hard as we can to get virtual appeals done. They are our priority. We recognise that they need to be done and ready as soon as we can. We have hundreds and hundreds of them because obviously we have some very popular schools. They have to be done virtually. They take longer, they take more support to make sure everyone can engage fully. So please bear with us. If you have a school appeal, it will happen. It just may take a bit longer. We promise you, your child will have the opportunity to have their case heard. Town centres, shops will reopen from the 1st of June. And we know cafes and restaurants are likely to reopen from the 4th of July, assuming that the R rate stays as it is. And again, that's not down to me. In readiness for that, we have a team forming. We're calling it R Cubed, which is about recovery, reset, reimagine. And we're working with our business communities to try and help with queuing systems, graphics on the street. At the moment, we have a post office, a pharmacist and a supermarket open, and it's quite easy between them to send the queues in different directions. Once you've got other shops open as well, and cafes open, and some shops wanting to put their goods out on the street, we have to think more carefully about how we manage potentially shops next door to each other with queues, and how do you keep the queues apart from each other, and how do you then keep the pavement free, and what about if there's somebody who's homeless who's sitting on the street? So all of those things are being considered. Please don't think that they're not happening. Those meetings are happening. We're engaging our business communities, we're engaging our charities that work with the homeless as much as we can. Okay, volume of beach losers. So just to repeat, bikes. The bike bylaw for the summer is not coming in at this stage. I will keep it under review, and we will update on a weekly basis. There's some really great stuff happening to allow more people to use their bikes, to put in more cycle lanes temporarily, to put in temporary ideas to stop rat runs, to keep roads closed, which perhaps have been closed over the last couple of months that might normally be expected to open. Those are all going to be done on experimental schemes, but they cannot be made permanent unless they've had full consultation. Litter is overflowing. Again, go back. Our staff are being reintegrated. It takes time. We've had over 200 people who can't work at all, and we've had over 600 people doing somebody else's job, so that we're filling all of our gaps. Those people are coming back into their normal roles, but it takes time. We cannot open a beach on a Monday and have staff there the same day. It just doesn't work. So we're working as hard and as quickly as we can. Should it have been revised for it? No. The car parks were opened because people are allowed to move. If you live in Kinston or you live in Christchurch and you want to go to the beach and you're too far to walk, the car park is there for you. You're going to go. You're going to go. We've seen in Dorset, they had chaos on some of their streets last week because they didn't open their car parks. They are opening their car parks this week. National Trust are opening their car parks. I'm absolutely sure we made the right decision to open our car parks. When we did, we had the full support of the police, and we're bringing, our services in as quickly as we can. If you feel there are too many people around, our message is very clear. Think twice, too busy, head home. So if you think there are too many people at the beach, the park or the town centre for you to safely socially distance, you head home. Because I can't control somebody else, but I can control what I do. And if I got somewhere and I thought, do you know what, this isn't safe, I'd head home. We can't make people do that. Unfortunately, the government made a rule. We can ask the police to help us, but the police also have limited capacity and they need to fight crime too. So, they're saying to us, you know what, personal responsibility. If it's too busy, head home. Most of the people on the beach that I've spoken to are local people. They're not coming down. We have seen that even though Dorset kept their car parks closed last weekend, people were travelling hundreds of miles, 2 hours in the car to come down and spend a day at the beach. That is not something that we can control. So I'm going to sign off now because we are 5 minutes over. I will do what I normally do, go back up. Anything that hasn't been covered, I will go back and cover it and answer it. If it's specific and personal, it's far better to contact the council direct or use the instant message system. They can make inquiries for you. And if you are feeling unwell and you do need to return to work, please remember we have a testing station in Creekmoor, which almost anybody who needs it can now register for a test. Just put in COVID testing online. It'll take you to the government website. You have to book. You can't turn up. You need to book. It's all done really, really safely. And that way you can know whether you are COVID positive or COVID negative and then take the appropriate action. So everybody stay safe. Next week, we're going to have to move to 1 o'clock because we have Cabinet next week and we have some big meaty projects to talk about. And I would not want to rush decisions that are going to make a big difference to people's lives, so I can be at both things. So Cabinet will take precedent next week. We will run next week's Facebook Live from 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Next Wednesday lunchtime. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.